UN investigators say Myanmar's top military generals should be investigated and prosecuted for genocide against the Rohingya in Rakhine State. A new report describes the targeted killing of thousands of Rohingya as the disintegration of a community. It says the persecution of the Muslim minority in Myanmar has led to a system of institutionalized oppression from birth to death. Myanmar army started so-called clearance operations after several military posts were attacked in Rakhine State last August. The UN says reports of up to 10,000 Rohingya killed are a conservative estimate. Around 750,000 also fled to neighbouring Bangladesh. Witnesses detailed mass killings, arson attacks and gang rapes. One victim described herself as lucky as she was only raped by 3 men. Several army commanders are named as being responsible for atrocities. The UN says their cases should be referred to the International Criminal Court or a tribunal. And the UN says there's enough evidence of war crimes being committed. The report also says the generals committed crimes against humanity and war crimes in Kachin and Shan states, both dominated by other ethnic minorities.
The mission has concluded that criminal investigation and prosecution is warranted, focusing on the top Tatmadaw generals in relation to the 3 categories of crimes under international law: genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. We have examined the period since 2011. The violations we have identified during this period are part of a history of abusive military conduct going back at least half a century. Their continual repetition is the result of the complete immunity accorded to the military commanders and the virtually complete impunity of troops.
Mohamed Jamjoom has more from Cox's Bazar in neighbouring Bangladesh, where hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees live in camps.
For the Rohingya activists we've spoken with, many of whom have been accusing the military in Myanmar of genocide for some time now, the news that a UN panel of investigators is recommending that top-tier military officials in Myanmar be charged with and put on trial for crimes of genocide is welcome news. But they are cautiously optimistic. The activists that we've spoken with have said, look, this sets a good precedent, but it must be followed through. They want to see the International Criminal Court actually step in and prosecute these officials in Myanmar that have been accused of committing crimes of genocide. But they also are aware, they're telling us, that this is something that could be riddled with complications. It's going to be a difficult and long process. What's interesting is that this news is coming just 2 days after there were mass demonstrations here in Kutupalong in Rakhine State, a crackdown and violence that led to the exodus of over 700,000 Rohingya, who are now located here in the world's largest refugee camp. In that anniversary, on that day, you had thousands of people demonstrating, and they were carrying signs, and they were calling that day Genocide Remembrance Day. It was a day when it was the largest demonstration that Rohingya had held and the whole time that they've been in this camp. They were remarkable scenes. You had men and women and young and old, and they were coming out and calling for accountability. And a lot of what they said is really in line with what we heard from this UN investigative panel today. So, as I mentioned, it is a sense of cautious optimism from the activists who we've spoken with. But again, they understand this is going to be a long and difficult process.
Mike Hanna has been getting a reaction from the UN in New York. Mike, what have people been saying